We go back to the newsroom now on BBC One for a report from Nicholas Witchell.
It's now reported that more than 400 people have been rescued from the British car ferry which capsized off the Belgian port of Zeebrugge tonight. The vessel, the Herald of Free Enterprise, had about 540 people aboard, most of them British. The latest information we have from a spokesman for Townsend Torreson, the ferry operators, is that 430 people are safe, though some of those have been hurt. That leaves about 107 people still unaccounted for. The Belgian authorities say 5 bodies have been found. The Herald of Free Enterprise set sail from Zeebrugge at 6 o'clock tonight, bound for Dover. There are conflicting reports of what happened next. One account says it hit the harbour wall, another that it ran onto a sandbank. About a mile out, the ferry rolled onto its side, throwing some people into the water, trapping others in the hull. Belgian, Dutch, French and British rescue services have been at the scene. They took the 430 survivors off. Divers are now working in the hull, searching for others. Christopher Morris now reports.
These were the first of the survivors to be brought ashore at Zeebrugge tonight. They'd been pulled from the water by a flotilla of rescue boats. All of them were suffering from the icy cold of the sea, and all of them recounted the horror of what happened when the ferry suddenly capsized. They spoke of panic on board as passengers tried to scramble aboard lifeboats or simply leapt into the sea. There were many children on board. The survivors said other passengers had been trapped below decks when the ferry turned over on its port side. There were 463 passengers on the board the Herald of Free Enterprise altogether, along with 80 crew members. So far, 350 people have been rescued, plus all the crew. But at least 5 passengers are dead, and the remaining 107 people are still unaccounted for. The huge international rescue operation will go on throughout the night. Divers are working inside the hull trying to reach the trapped passengers, and there are clear signs of survivors inside, and there's plenty of air. However, the rescuers are having to enter the stricken vessel through portholes on the starboard side, while the passengers have to try and climb up vertically to reach safety. 45 minutes after the ferry left Zeebrugge harbour, disaster struck. First reports suggested a collision with the harbour wall about a mile offshore, but it's now believed the ferry may have hit a sandbank, which caused the bow doors to burst open, water gushing into the car deck. The vessel was not on its usual route between Dover and Calais. Instead, it had been switched onto the Dover-Zeebrugge run. The Dutch authorities have set up emergency centres in towns and villages along the coast to assist survivors being brought ashore. Hospitals in Bruges have treated almost 100 people so far. And out at sea, the destroyer HMS Glasgow is among more than 30 ships involved in the rescue operation. Also on station is the frigate HMS Diomede. Helicopters are still hovering overhead to winch passengers to safety as they are pulled out from the hull. Among the passengers were between 75 and 100 readers of the Sun newspaper who had joined a £1 a head day trip for shopping and sightseeing. Now, 6 hours after the ferry capsized in the worst ever channel disaster in peacetime, Coast Guard say hope for the missing is fading. Weather conditions at the scene are good, though the sea is freezing cold.
British rescue helicopters from Caldrose in Cornwall and Manston and Coltishall on the east coast have been sent to the scene of the disaster. At Manston, they've been returning to refuel, then they're going on to pick up more divers and equipment to help in the search for survivors. The RAF has sent out an urgent appeal for more thermal imagers, a type of heat-seeking equipment. The pilot of the latest Sea King helicopter to arrive at Manston spoke to Triona Holden.
Hopefully there'll be in life rafts, which should make it easier for us, and the life rafts have normally got lights on. They won't have drifted too far from the ship. The life rafts are very well equipped, or they should be on a ferry like that, so they should be able to, through the night, it'll be no problem. And lights, particularly at night, show up very well. You can expect to see lights from about 500 feet, from 10 miles off easily. So we stand a good chance of seeing the lights.
The rescue operation at RAF Manston. Our correspondent Stephen Jessel is in Zeebrugge, and he's just sent this report from the scene of the disaster.
The latest news here in Zeebrugge is that 6 people are known to have died. At least 200 are thought still to be aboard the ferry. most of which is underwater a mile offshore. The cause of the capsize is still not known, but it looks increasingly as if the door to the car deck opened for some reason and the sea came flooding in. About 350 people are reported to be safe. They were picked up by other craft. An enormous international operation is underway, with divers going down along the hull to seek to rescue those people believed trapped inside. Weather conditions are good. The rescue work will go on throughout the night.
Stephen Jessel in Zeebrugge. Well, one of the survivors who was taken to Bruges Hospital was Rosina Summerfield from London. Though still deeply distressed, she gave our reporter James Robbins this account of what happened.
All of a sudden there was a crash and the boat fell sideways, and it fell sideways, and we thought that it was going to correct itself, but it just fell further and further until it was completely on its side. There's people screaming and shouting, and there was children, and everybody was shouting for help, and then the lights went out of the water, and all you could hear was water, and water came through the side that sunk, and people were floating around, and there was glass and everything everywhere, and people floating and children crying.
How did you manage to get out?
We screamed. I was in the corridor, and the water was coming up further. We were climbing up the stairs further and further because they was on the side. And we climbed further and further to get out of the water. And we couldn't smash the window above. If they got any more, we'd have been drowned. And then the rescue people came in about 20 minutes, and we were sitting there crying. And they smashed the windows, pulled us through.
Britain's part in the rescue operation is being coordinated from the RAF Southern Rescue Centre in Plymouth. Their main task has been to send Royal Naval divers to the scene. From Plymouth, this report now from John Walmsley.
In the RAF Coordination Centre at Mount Wise in Plymouth, the call for all help was acted on immediately. The centre scrambled helicopters from the Royal Naval Air Station at Caldrose in Cornwall and from Brawdy in South Wales, Manston in Kent and Coltishall in Norfolk, the furthest some 350 miles away from Zeebrugge. But it was from Plymouth that the main need, experienced divers who could find survivors trapped in the hull, were alerted to join up with waiting aircraft. There are people inside that ship. In these water conditions, how long have they got?
Well, in the situation that we hope that the survivors are in, which is inside the ship and not immersed in water, they could last rather longer than they could in water alone, where the life expectancy is anything between a quarter of an hour and half an hour.
So what can your divers do?
Well, we hope that in the fullness of time that they'll be able to get inside the ship and find survivors in air pockets and so on inside the ship. But at the present time, the pressure is on us to get people into the disaster scene as quickly as possible so that the divers can assist in the rescue effort that's going on at the moment.
And we finish this special bulletin with the latest casualty details available from Townsend Torreson. They say that of the 463 passengers thought to have been on board, 350 have been rescued, and all of the 80 crew members are safe as well. But the company say that at least 5 people have died. There is one emergency telephone number to call if you think you may have had friends or relatives on board. The number is 0622, that's the code for Maidstone, 0622 54321. Let me just repeat that, 0622 54321. And Townsend Torreson say you should not call a London number that they gave out earlier. And that's the latest news from BBC Television tonight. Radio 2 will of course be on the air throughout the night, and at 8:30 BBC One will be back on the air with a special edition of Breakfast Time. For the moment though, from the BBC Television newsroom, good night.
Now the weather. There'll be a frost in eastern areas tonight, and some roads will become icy. Tomorrow, western areas will be windy with outbreaks of rain. Much of Britain will have a mixture of sleet and snow, however, with several inches of snow possible on high ground. Eastern areas will be a little brighter than on Friday. With fresh or strong southeasterly winds, most places will feel very cold. And that's the weather. Well, the time now is coming up to 5 minutes to 1. And once again, a reminder that BBC One will be on the air at 8:30 in the morning with Breakfast Time Special reporting the latest news of the ferry disaster in Zeebrugge. But for the moment, from all of us on BBC One, I'll wish you good night.